We have Grandmaster Alexander Donchenko from Germany taking on Anish Giri in the second game of their encounter at the FIDE World Cup 2025. This is round number 3. The first game between them ended in a draw, and now Anish with the black pieces, Donchenko with white. The move is 1d4, and Anish, one of the top players in the tournament, responds back with knight to f6. The most likely outcome of such a encounter is a draw, because Donchenko is very solid with the white pieces and Anish the same. I mean, he's just solid player overall and a world class player. So generally such games end in draws, and then you go into the tie breaks on the next day. But Donchenko showing already some ambition with knight c3, allowing the Nimzo Indian e3, the Rubinstein system. For some time, you lock up your bishop on c1 so that your other pieces have good squares, bishop d3, knight e2 or knight f3, castles, and then eventually you aim for the e4 breakthrough. So bishop comes out to d3 and Anish goes rook e8. This is slightly offbeat move, making a square for the bishop to go back on f8 when kicked away. And now Anish plays in the center with pawn to d5. White castles here. And now black goes back, bishop f8 unprovoked. Well, white now goes e4, and this is what we were talking about. The bishop opens up, and maybe Anish has spent quite some time, castling, rook e8, dropping the bishop back, and white wants to take advantage of that fact. So knight takes e4, and you go knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and black goes knight to d7. The queen comes to c2, trying to put pressure here. Now knight f6 is possible, but Anish goes for the more bold f5 move, and also it grabs some space. Well, you can think about e5 here, but then there's bishop d5 check, which could be slightly irritating, and bishop f7. So he goes first c6, and Alexander goes g3, but now you can push pawn to e5. This is what Anish does. And well, if you take on f5, you have e takes d4, and black is better. So bishop goes back to g2, and now Anish can push the pawn to e4, but he decides to take on d4. The f5 pawn does look a bit weak, but on the other hand, black's pieces start to get more active. Now if you take knight takes f5, then queen d3 is a beautiful move. So take, and f5 is hanging. So rook d1 is played, trying to put pressure here, and Anish gets queen f6. Very active position. Now c5 played here for white, trying to clamp down on the d6 square. You go a5, gaining space and also stopping b4, bishop b2. Donchenko plays b3 for that reason now, and Anish brings back his queen to f7. Alexander Donchenko has space because of the pawn on c5. Also, the pawn on f5 looks a bit weak. The bishop on c8 is a bit limited, but Anish has potential in this position. He goes h6, rook to e1, and maybe he would love to kind of go bishop d7, connect the rooks. Yeah, that's what he does, bishop to d7. And in the end games, the a5 pawn could potentially become weak. f4 played by Donchenko here. If knight f3 check, you can take back with the knight defending the rook, so that's not a problem. Knight goes back to g6. And now the bishop comes out to e3, finishing the development. Rook to e7. Anish wants to double the rooks on the e file. And white goes bishop to f2, opening up the rook. And Anish brings the other rook to e8. We were talking about the pawn on a5 becoming a potential weakness. That could happen. Rook takes e7. And now Anish must take back, perhaps with the knight here. Yes, he does that. Knight takes e7. And Donchenko brings his other rook to e1, pinning the knight on e7. The knight goes to d5. Now, there are two attackers here. So, after rook e8, whatever you take back with, one of the defenders of f5 pawn is going to be reduced. So, he takes queen e8. But now can Donchenko play knight f5 and get up an extra pawn? Yes, he does. So 15 minutes for Donchenko, 36 for Anish. But Anish has some compensation here. He goes knight to b4. And he's asking a question to this queen that you have to stay in touch with your knight. Queen goes back to b1. Queen c4 would have been met with bishop e6. So queen b1 and now queen h5, a nice move. Trying to put pressure here. Maybe the better move was queen e6. But he went queen h5, knight d6. And now Anish snatches the pawn on h3. But this isn't the best idea because after takes, you have queen to g6. And the problem now is there is a threat of queen f7. If you take on d6, I have cd6 and my c pawn is very strong. So goes queen d7 back. And now f5. Maybe even stronger was king h2, stopping here and then going on with knight f5, knight h6 ideas. But okay, f5 played. And now Anish comes back, knight d5. Once again, the position has kind of equalized. bd4 played by Donchenko. He's angling for the f6 breakthrough. But queen e7 stops it and now threatens queen e1 check, entering into the territory. King f1 played to stop it. And now pawn to b5. Anish basically getting rid of his b7 weakness because if cb6, then d6 is hanging. a4 played by Alexander. And now b takes a4. Anish has 1 minute 50 seconds. 4 minutes for Donchenko. And now he must play knight e3. That's important move. Not at all easy to play, but he goes wrong with queen d7. Donchenko now has a winning move here. Anish's queen d7 was a mistake. He is looking at the h3 square if the pawn pushes forward, but the pawn push is incredibly strong here. If Donchenko finds it, and Anish takes the pen, he wants to write the move f6 found by Alexander Donchenko, and this position can be very deceptive because you could feel that nothing's happening, but look, a piece has been given. I mean, pawn was pushing forward to f7, fg7 was coming, queen e6. So he pins it here. And now knight to e4. Notice how you can't move the king away because of queen h6 or bishop g7 and you win the queen. So queen c4 check by Anish. But now the king can simply move away. King to g2. And Anish Giri is totally winning here, is totally losing here. Donchenko is totally winning. And with this victory, he would move to round 4. The sad news would, of course, be that Anish Giri would get eliminated from the tournament. That would be something that's quite heartbreaking. King h3, Queen f1 check. He gives another check. King comes to g4. And now Queen d1. Donchenko calmly and coolly keeps moving his king forward. There are perhaps no more checks. There's one check on d7. But what after king e5? He goes king f4. And now he plays queen e6. Still keeping the spin on. But g4. Very strong move. And finally Anish has to move the queen because there's no other move that the opponent has almost. And bishop c3, just saving the bishop here so that now you are a complete piece up. Anish gives a check, but after just king e5, it's all over. Black has only one pawn for the piece and white pieces are so active. Knight f6 check coming in at some point. And yeah, huge win here for Donchenko. He's clearly better, and with this he would move to round number 4, which is, I think, for him a huge result to beat someone as solid as Anish Giri. Anish resigns, and one of the things, we put this in a little bit of a fast forward because they spend quite a lot of time here, and that is the thing that is most admirable about Anish Giri. He wins or loses, doesn't miss the opportunity to analyze and talk with his opponent, and I think that is something we can all learn from him.